Hello, welcome back to the game developer log. This will be covering week 1, the 26th through the 30th. So this is the start. After 8 months of learning these courses, I finally felt comfortable to begin sitting down with the Unity engine and actually getting my hands dirty and starting a project. So I set out to make a schedule. No longer would I do a 2-hour focused mobile application learning and working with that, and then a 2-hour focused game development learning. Now it would be full time, you know, an 8-hour schedule like a regular job, while I'm unemployed. I also be tracking my time over the course, to kind of get an idea, how long of, time I put into this. So not really jumping into the Unity engine right away, but actually starting to uh, think about think about the game. Put pen to paper, start brainstorming what kind of game I want to make. I have a whole bunch of ideas. Do I make a kind of a Resident Evil horror game, or do I make you know, an action game, a puzzle game? What do you want to do? There's so many choices, so many options. So I've always had a hobby as a video game player, but if you were going to make a game, you can only choose one. Which one would you go for? So putting a lot of thought into the actual, which direction you're going to go to, brainstorming, a lot of thinking about it. So, I finally landed on, okay, I want to do a kind of a action adventure game, shoot on, and I wanted to do kind of like an isometric game, but what does that mean, isometric, I also wanted to do a VR game. Ever since VR came out, I've been a big VR enthusiast, and I wanted to, I'm a real fan of like the stereoscopic gaming. You really get a sense of immersion. I played a bunch of VR games, and one of the games that really stuck out to me was a game called Moss. Or Half-Life Alyx. High end. A game that looks good, but also, you know, you know. So overall, one of my goals for the game is, doing a lot of research on, how indie game developers are successful. I think one of the most important things is that your game looks good. Whether or not you can accomplish that as a solo developer is but in essence, when you go to the Steam store page, you're not going to get any attention if your game looks like it was created for the PlayStation 1. Maybe if that's the style you're going for, but I don't think you're going to capture the market unless you have a real production polish to the game. Now, I have a background in software development, so I know that at the end of the day, you want to deliver a quality product, and that's what I want to do. Um, and however much that takes. So I want to do a VR game, kind of using different titles that I've played before as a model. What would be fun. Capture the fun. So also, I think doing an action game, but also more of like a stealth action where you're doing some stealth and also some shooter. So like a top-down game, I envision a top-down game, not a first-person, not a third-person, but a top-down. I want to do isometric, but then I learned that isometric is not possible in VR because of the nature of stereoscopic perspective. You can't do isometric. Um, so settling on top-down perspective, non-isometric is what I was going to go for. So a lot of thinking about um, game mechanics and level design went into this. So starting from zero, the courses taught me, about how to use the tools, but they didn't really cover anything like, you know, how to design, how to think about the entire scope of your game, how to think about level design, pieces, the levels that make up the entire game, how to decide on your core game mechanics. Um, so it's just like a whole whole nother aspect of game development, not just being able to use the tools, but actually putting all the pieces together in a coherent product that you can deliver to the market and sell eventually. Um, that's a whole other aspect. So kind of doing a lot of researching in week one about what it takes to be successful, and then also really bringing down my expectations as a solo developer, what you can be capable of, and not having expectations of making any money, but actually finding a fulfillment in the process of working on a project while you're not employed, even though you're not making money. So I'm fortunate enough to have a bit of money set aside that I can weather unemployment, but I need a project like this to keep me busy and working throughout the day until I go completely broke. So that's kind of the purpose of this project, and that's fine. Um, so doing a lot of thinking about the core mechanics, I really wanted a core mechanic of invisibility cloaking. That really stood out to me. Like, if you're doing a stealth game, I want to be able to stealth around, hide, but also if you're spotted, I want to be able to hit a button and, you put on a cloak so you can escape. So I did a lot of research looking at other VR games and what they do. They have, you can hide in the bushes. There's certain points, but um, overall, I'll discuss this later, but you have a lot of ideas, but you can't really realize these ideas until you actually implement them and prototype in the game and do some play testing. So you could have all these great ideas, but eventually reality will set in, and it's like being a solo developer, what can you accomplish? So, um, so I started week one starting to install some of the tools and add-ons from the asset store that I had purchased previously. One of them is Top-Down Engine. This is a pretty much a engine in a box, a system implemented for you. I'm a big believer from a software development background that you don't sit down and reinvent the wheel. You want to find examples and models of architecture and code that have implemented and tested and are vetted to be stable, and then you, instead of building the system from scratch that you understand, you use someone else's system and you understand that system, and then you modify that system in a safe way. So this engine in a box gives you, you know, all the things that I would have to implement on my own. That it just cuts out a lot of time, but it also adds a lot of bloat. So at the end of the day, I'm going to take what I want, modify the system, and leave the rest, what I don't need. But it's a really good model to use. The only downside is you have to understand how the thing works. It's pretty complicated, but I think it's a uh, better way to go. So setting up the Unity project, you know, adding the XR framework, I ran into a problem at integration hell. Something was going wrong with the system. Adding the XR framework on top of TDE and doing the head-mounted display camera, integrating that with the actual Cinemachine follow camera. I was getting a lot of crashes, and this is the point where the rubber hits the road of development, where you you want to do something custom, and there's no easy fix, there's no easy solution. You're on your own pretty much, and that's what I've had to experience as a normal software developer. Sometimes you have to come up with a solution and there's no help, and you just have to figure it out. Um, so eventually it's really a process of elimination, going step by step and figuring it. When you don't have a lot of experience, eventually you realize there's something called a universal render pipeline versus a standard renderer. What is that? Having to dive in and, okay, I see what's going on here. So what was happening, the top-down engine, when you're importing that asset, it would change your project settings, and it was getting all messed up. So you'd have random crashes, um, but it's just a process of grinding through it and getting the project stable. The most important thing as a developer also is having checkpoints. So that brings us to week two, and I'll be discussing that in the next video. Stay tuned. Thank you very much.